Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Saints Insider Podcast for Wednesday, September 20th. I'm Zach Ewing. This is Luke Johnson, Rod Walker, and Jeff Duncan, and we got lots to talk about. Saints are 2-0 for the first time in 10 years, and they have a win over the Carolina Panthers. But somehow everything doesn't quite feel right in Saints land. They feel a little off, and they are headed to Green Bay. So a tough game this week coming up as well as they look to go to 3-0. We'll talk about the running back situation. We'll touch on Marcus May's suspension, and we'll look ahead to that Green Bay game before our full preview in Friday's podcast. Want to let you know before we get going, the Saints Insider Podcast is brought to you by Bank Plus. Their banking decisions are actually made right here in New Orleans by local bankers who know the community and take the time to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to bank anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Learn more at bankplus.net. So our thanks to Bank Plus, and we'll get rolling here, guys. Saints are 2-0, and Dunk, you were the one of us not in Charlotte on Monday night, but you watched it on TV, and, look, you couldn't have a more similar game to their opening game against Tennessee that they, kind of slog through the first half offensively, get it going. They're great defensively, and then just do enough in the end.
Yeah, I think we all thought this was going to be the kind of game it was, right? It's kind of a defensive slugfest, and I think what Derek Carr said afterwards is spot on. I mean, everyone can see this team is not playing its best football right now, but they're still winning. So that's got to be encouraging that while the defense is playing lights out, keeping them in the games, the offense, which we all thought was going to take a little while to gel. There were so many new moving pieces that needed to be fit into the equation. As Dennis said after the game, they got a new quarterback. They got a new left side of the offensive line. Michael Thomas is coming back. There's a lot of things to integrate. So we knew the offense early on was probably going to take a little time, but they're still winning despite that. So I think it's, there's so much room for improvement on offense, but the defense is so good right now. And the lineup of teams they play, I think they're going to be in every game and have a chance to win every game.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of odd to be 2 weeks into an NFL season, Rod, and not have any of your sort of prior assumptions challenged. We thought this team, okay, it's a weak schedule. They have a new quarterback. It's going to take some time. The defense is good, but they should be able to handle this schedule. And so far through 2 weeks, that's pretty much how it is.
Yeah, and I think it just basically kind of goes back to how good this defense is. It's really good. It keeps you in games anyway. And teams, the quarterbacks they're facing haven't been great. I think you get that combination of things, and it's kind of led to this 2-0 start, which is a lot better than being 1-1 or 0-2 at this point and still trying to figure things out. I think this offense is still trying to figure things out, and because of how good the defense is, it gives them a little bit more leeway to do that.
Yeah, I mean, Luke, it's like the old coaching cliche. It's better to work on stuff after a win than it is after a loss. And I mean, I think the Saints have plenty to work on. I don't know that you can win like this all year long.
No, I mean, I don't think so. And I don't think any of us are expecting the offense to continue looking like this, right? I think at some point they're going to figure out something with Trevor Penning. And I think personally that it's going to be Penning figuring it out. I mean, we talked about it last week. I think he played a little bit better this week. But they can't continue to just play 16, 17 games or 20 to 17 games. At some point in the modern NFL, even though this team has gone 10 straight weeks holding teams to 20 or fewer points, at some point in the modern NFL, you have to score points. It's just the way you have to win in this league now. So I think it's there. I love some of the pieces they have offensively, but it's just going to take a little while for it to click.
Yeah, it's had they lost one of these games, the feeling would be totally different, right? Like it would feel an awful lot like last year if they had lost one of these games.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. Look, I would say in defense of the offense, pardon the pun, but they played two good defenses, two good front sevens especially, that can cause a lot of problems up front. So, when I watch it, sometimes I have to take that into account. Brian Burns is a good player, Frankie Louvu, some of these guys are excellent players, but we can also see, sometimes thinking, it looks like Trevor Penning might be thinking a little bit at times, which is natural. But I just think the ceiling for improvement is so much higher, on offense, especially with Alvin Kamara coming back. He adds a dimension to this offense that they don't have right now. I don't know how much better the running game is going to get in general, but I think what we saw from Taysom Hill as well, that package working where it didn't work that well against Tennessee, that adds a whole nother element to the running game. That, I mean, what do you end up with 75
rushing yards.
Right. All of a sudden, you throw that in with Alvin Kamara, you feel a lot better about the rushing attack, and that takes some of the pressure off that offensive line and Derek Carr.
Well, and I think it's also something where if we see this passing attack get a little bit more consistent, it's going to open up some lanes, I think. It just, especially with how much speed they have at the skill positions on the outside. You got you got like Rashid Shaheed running the go ball. I mean, it's gonna ease things up a little bit. And I think the same thing applies to Chris Olave, who's kind of continuing to show that he's a pretty good deep ball threat. So if they can start getting that a little bit more consistent, I think it's going to open things up for that run game.
The concern for me, I think, is just the Derek Carr interceptions. Though both of them were like really bad. They didn't end up having to pay for any of them because the defense sort of bailed them out there. But you do need to see those careless interceptions like that go away, because eventually that can come back to haunt this team.
Yeah, the one Monday night especially. I mean, it was like we all kind of looked at each other in the press box, like, where is he throwing that ball? I mean, it's hard to even tell what he was seeing there. Like,
well, the knock on him with the Raiders was that when you did pressure him, he felt it and would kind of, I don't want to say panic, but that's what that looked like to me. He saw a guy in his face, just threw it up. So let's hope that was just an anomaly. The one thing I like about Carr a lot, it reminds me of Drew Brees in this regard, is that he'll take accountability for it. I like that. It's strong leadership, doesn't make excuses. I mean, and he knows he's got a defense that can overcome that. I mean, they didn't, like you said, they didn't pay for any of his interceptions.
Well, that's a great point to pivot on. I mean, I do want to talk about how good this defense has been. Rod, you wrote the column. They broke a Dome Patrol record now 10 games in a row, allowing fewer than 20 points. And some of that, you need the offense to not turn the ball over, and you need field position on your side. But in some cases, they haven't even had that. I mean, they've had short fields to defend and things like that. And this defense just doesn't budge. And part of that, especially this year, look, is the offenses they've faced. But, I mean, I think this defense has gone from us knowing they'd be pretty good to saying this may be one of the NFL's very best units.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you look at those third down numbers. I mean, they're getting off the field. They're 6 of 26, I think. The opponents are 6 of 26 on third downs. So they're getting off the field. Marshawn Lattimore is playing lights out. They're not even throwing to his side of the field. So he's, basically shutting his side down. So I think the pressure up front's been good. I think Carl Granderson's played extremely well, probably better than I was expecting going into the season. So I just think they've done everything right on defense and only allowed, one touchdown to the first 2 games. So that'll keep you in a lot of games.
Yeah. And to that point, I want to point out the third down numbers. I was looking at that this morning before you tweeted it out. I think their run defense has been a huge part of this. Mm-hmm. It's through 2 weeks. I mean, it's a small sample size, but it's a big improvement over last year. And you look at some of these third downs they've put teams in, the situations. It's like 3rd and long, over and over and over and over again. And I think that's why we're seeing their pass rush numbers are better. Their turnover numbers are better because these teams are in kind of desperate situations. Opposing quarterbacks right now have a 14.7 passer rating against the Saints on third down. I've been killing people on that down. So, look, I think this is all super, super encouraging stuff, and we'll see if they're able to carry that forward throughout the season. I think we'll get a really good sense of it this week against a kind of a fun Green Bay offense.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. They're winning first and second down a lot, which is setting them up. But their pass coverage right now has just been lights out, and I think it's that experience there of being able to know when to hand receivers off and having that kind of communication that was missing early last season. I think with the new safeties, I think they've got all that ironed out, and we saw it in this game. Now, some of it's probably Bryce Young's inexperience, but he's holding the ball for a long time, and that's letting that rush get to him. And normally that ball should come out at 2.7 or 3 seconds, and they're holding it because there's nobody open. Now, part of that is Panthers don't have anybody can get open, but I think also is the Saints just have really good pass defenders.
Yeah, you came up with the number. Marshawn Lattimore, when he's been targeted, has allowed a 9.8 passer rating. I mean, that's like turning everybody in the league into Ian Book. Not to fire shots, strays at Ian Book, but like, you know what I mean?
Right.
And these, not that Ryan Tannehill and Bryce Young are going to be in the Pro Bowl this year or anything. But yeah, what you guys are saying is dead on. When it's 3rd and 8, when it's 3rd and 10, you got nowhere to go against this defense.
Yeah, well, and I think the rush has been a huge part of that too. Saints, I think right now we're top 10 in the NFL in pressure rate, They were like bottom 5 last year in that. And they're not really like a top blitzing team. They're getting a lot of it done with their front 4. And when you're able to do that, it just like it's obvious. It's just math, right? If you're getting the rush home with 4 guys, what are the other 7 guys doing? You're covering guys out on the routes, and it just makes it when you don't have to send Caden Ellis and Demario Davis like they were doing over and over and over again last year. It frees them up to then take away options at the back end. And I think that's such a huge component to their early season success.
And I would say this: we're going to talk Packers probably more later in the week, but we don't know what their offensive line is going to look like with Bakhtiari and Jenkins both being kind of questionable this week. They're both excellent offensive line. I think this offensive line they face this week is going to be a lot better than the first 2 they play, especially considering Carolina's mission, both their starting guards. So, again, small sample size, but they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're dominating up front against players that they're more talented than, and they didn't do that at times last year.
And they may catch another break with skill players. Aaron Jones and Christian Watson both battling injuries too, so it's possible those guys don't play for Green Bay. So we'll talk more about that game. You're watching Saints Insider Podcast on NOLA.com and the Saints NOLA.com YouTube channel. Give us a like, subscribe, 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you can. We appreciate all of that. We're brought to you by Bank Plus. And recapping the Saints-Panthers a little bit, want to move forward to Saints-Packers. But first, kind of an odd situation on the other side of the ball, guys. The running back situation. Only 2 running backs were active for that game Monday night. It was Jamal Williams and Tony Jones Jr. And then sort of in the Murphy's Law sort of way, Jamal Williams gets hurt, I think, early second quarter, and the Saints are left with 1 active running back. I mean, how you could be an NFL team and be left in that situation for more than a half of a game is pretty stunning. Now, Tony Jones Jr. did the job, thankfully, for the Saints. He got 2 touchdowns, the first 2 of his career. Great story. But, Luke, how did that happen?
Well, I think they go into this thing knowing that they have Taysom Hill as a ace in the pocket, and that's exactly what he ended up being, right? But personally, especially when we know they're going into that game with 52 players on their active roster instead of 53. 2 of the guys who were on their active roster, one of them, obviously, Kendre Miller, was questionable going into the game. They worked him out before the game. I guess he just wasn't ready. But they had Kirk Merritt there too, and they didn't dress him out. I personally don't understand how you can put yourself in that situation. It's just very risky. So I think they are very lucky fortunate to have a player like Taysom Hill on that team. I think that might have been the first time we saw him all season take a snap in the backfield. Did they pitch it to him or give him a handoff? I can't remember what it was, but without Taysom, we were like 1 freak injury away from seeing Adam Prentice being RB1, RB2, RB3, and that's not a situation you want to be in, especially when you're going to be playing in a hard-fought divisional game. I think you want to have all available resources at your beck and call.
It says a lot about Taysom, though, man. He's just always ready for whatever they need him to do, and I don't know if sometimes people appreciate him enough, but
I don't think they win that game without Taysom Hill. I don't think so.
He's so fun, man. Like, let's just can we start a campaign right now to get everybody to appreciate Taysom Hill for what he is? Like, I get so I don't know if worked up is the right way to put this, but like constantly, they play in these primetime games and people are watching, and I see like other reporters or football fans or whatever, they'll have a tweet that says like, once again the Saints are using Taysom Hill. Like, what do they see in the sky? It's like, what do they see?
What do they not see?
What do they not see?
Well, they called Cordell Stewart Slash. Like, he's nothing on Taysom Hill.
Like, Taysom's averaging like 6 yards a carry in his career. He's got like 10 touchdown catches. He's not a star NFL quarterback, but it's not like he's bad.
Right.
Taysom's probably a top, 40 quarterback in the NFL.
Right.
And if he's your emergency guy, your number 3 guy, like, what is wrong with him?
Well, the other thing is I think his quarterback background's what's allowed him to be able to handle all the roles, right? He can come in and play running back, and come in and play tight end. And I don't think people appreciate how hard that is, just to know all the positions and all the responsibilities. That's a lot mentally to compartmentalize that a lot of players probably couldn't handle, but he can. and who knows what he goes through preparing every week. You know, now maybe he has it all down now, but I think being able to switch hats like that midstream is, I think very much an overlooked skill.
So going forward with the running back situation, and you brought up a good point too, Jeff. Kirk Merritt could have been active for that game, but wasn't. That was one of the real weird decisions. But it does look like Kendre Miller is going to be able to play. There's reports out there that he's in full health. As we're recording this Wednesday afternoon, don't have a practice report yet. They haven't even actually practiced yet. But it looks like Kendre Miller is going to make his NFL debut as a starting running back at Lambeau Field. Like he's going to have to be the guy because I don't think Jamal Williams will be ready.
No, look, I think it's going to be fun to watch, right? We've all been kind of waiting to see this kid run. Well, he's going to get some opportunities here, and this is why they drafted him. Now with Jamal Williams out, it's going to be huge for him to, I think, he'll split time with Tony Jones in this game. I mean, I think both those guys are going to get a lot of work. But they could have success. I mean, now I watched the Packers-Falcons game, and I've been completely in love with Bijan Robinson. I think that guy's incredible. But they had a lot of success running on the Packers. The Falcons did. Now, maybe this is just a special talent. We'll see. But I think you have to be encouraged when the Saints coaches are watching tape that they should be able to muster some yards on the ground against this Packers defense.
I mean, I think the best news is, Luke, like this is the last week they have to worry about all this without Alvin Kamara. His 3-game suspension that they were trying to get through and brought in Jamal Williams and Kendre Miller only to see them both get hurt is finally going to be over after this week.
Yeah, I've been trying to find the right word for that, right? Like they spend the entire offseason knowing they have to get better at the running back room. They sign last year's rushing touchdown champ. They use a 3rd-round pick on somebody they're really excited about, and they're like, okay, Alvin's only out 3 games. We can get through those 3 games. And then neither of those 2 guys were there for the 3 games, like for all of them. So, yeah, I mean, it is. I guess if you're looking at this, it is good timing for Jamal Williams to go out with a hamstring injury with Kendre coming back. But it's just like, almost comical. The Saints team can never seem to be just like all the way put together the way you want to see it. I don't know. I personally am excited to see Kendre Miller. We didn't really get to see much of what he could do in the preseason because he's running behind 2nd and 3rd team offensive line. But he is so explosive when he's healthy, and you can see that it just like pops off the field. And if that 1st team offensive line is able to get its act together against this Packers team, which, like Jeff said, I mean, they faced 2 pretty good rushing attacks in Chicago and Atlanta in their first 2 games, but I mean, they haven't been great against the run.
Right.
If they're able to give him just a little bit of daylight, I mean, we might see like a 40-yard run or a 50-yard run. He is so explosive.
I think if you had told Dennis Allen or even Saints fans that this team would be 2-0 with a chance to go 3-0 without Alvin Kamara, I think everybody would have taken that. So that says a lot about how they've been able to withstand what we thought was going to be, we thought could be a big issue for this team.
Yeah, and that's a good place. We'll transition into the Packers game a little bit here, but I also, before we leave the running backs totally, like Tony Jones, let's give some ups to that guy who came in and, just a journeyman who had been, I don't know how many, half a dozen teams in his career, and he gets 2 touchdowns that win the game on Monday Night Football, and it happened to be his wife's birthday the next day, which Rod, you wrote a column about it. I mean, just like one of these unbelievable stories that happens in the NFL.
Yeah, for it to be on a Monday night game, he's talked about how grateful he was. It's just actually his 3rd team in the past year. Spent some time with Sean Payton's team out in Denver, this offseason and got released. And he's only been here for 3 weeks, and he was able to, he was here prior to this stint, but only been back for 3 weeks, and for him to be able to step up on a Monday night, that speaks volumes for him.
Well, look, I'll also say hat tip to Mike Parrington, the director of pro personnel, and that staff, because they know this just for this contingency, right? Let's get a guy in here who knows our system, that we don't have to train. He knows the offense. Same thing they did with Keith Kirkwood. Brought him back because he knows the system. They like him. If you would have brought somebody in that wasn't in the system before, he would not have been able to do what Tony Jones did. So that's a credit to the pro personnel department for recognizing that and going to get Tony Jones. Because if you don't have him, they might not win that game. Who knows?
And it wasn't just the 2 touchdowns for Tony Jones either.
Right.
I think it was Brandon Thorne who, if you guys don't follow Brandon Thorne on Twitter, I would highly recommend it. You learn a lot about offensive line play. But he shared a supercut of like Tony Jones picking up like 6 blitzes in that game. He did a great job in pass protection. It's an underrated part of a running back's game, and it's why I think even though I expect Kendre Miller to carry most of the load, we'll see a good bit of Tony Jones this week.
Great point. That's what I was getting at. Like people don't understand how much the Saints ask their running backs to be a part of pass protection. You've got to know a lot of stuff. I'm not sure how much Kendre Miller is ready for that. So I think in the third down package, we'll probably see Tony Jones a lot more than Kendre Miller, because I guarantee you, if Kendre Miller's in there, the Packers are going to attack him with pressure packages to see if he's ready. That's something I would do if I were Green Bay.
Okay, so this game in Green Bay is a noon Sunday kick. It's traditionally a really difficult scheduling spot to go from a Monday night road game to a Sunday afternoon road game somewhere else the next week. And I mean, we're feeling it. Like, I mean, it's Wednesday. It feels like the week's just started, and this game's in 3.5 days. So it's a tough spot for the Saints, but they're 2-0, and it almost feels like you hate to use the word house money because every win counts and every win counts the same, and you'd love to be 3-0. But this is a situation, and Dunk, you mentioned it, like if you had told the Saints they'd be 2-1 without Alvin Kamara, they'd have taken it 100 times out of 100. So how do they approach this game? I mean, it almost feels like you've almost got nothing to lose going up there.
I feel like that's exactly how they should approach it, right? I mean, go in there, roll the dice, maybe get aggressive, try and get the lead early, because you know that place is going to be amped. It's their home opener. They played their first 2 games on the road.
They're 1-1.
They're going to be a little desperate because they just lost. They didn't play that well in Atlanta. So in my opinion, they really have nothing to lose. I mean, if they come back 2-1, so be it. They want to be 3-0. But, man, if they can steal this game somehow and come back 3-0, I don't think anybody would have thought this team would be 3-0. I certainly didn't in my crystal ball forecast, which is already shot because I picked them to lose the Panthers.
You don't say.
Which I'm sure you all are gloating over. But, no, I mean, if you're 3-0 and coming back to get Tampa Bay in the Dome, I mean, then you're starting to think this is going to be one of the best starts they've had in recent memory.
Yeah.
And I agree that it is house money, but I do think you need to see some improvement from this offense this weekend. I just think that's important. You don't want to see 3 straight games of them struggling to get to the end zone and them having to come through with some late drives to win the game. I mean, you want to see them be a little bit more efficient in the red zone and get in the end zone. And that's something the players talked about during the postgame. Chris Olave and Michael Thomas, all those guys talked about how they know they need to be better on offense. I think you need to see some improvement in the 3rd week of the season.
I will say that while we are all rational, logical people looking at this from the outside, I guarantee the Saints don't feel like they're playing with house money this week. And that is always the mantra for these guys, right? Mm-hmm. It is focus on the day, on the preparation, and don't worry about what's happened 2 weeks ago, last week. Don't worry about what's happening next week. Focus on right now. And they are not feeling like they would be okay coming back. I mean, grand scheme of things, looking back on the season, sure, or looking ahead of the season, like, yeah, we'd love to be 2-1 coming back.
But they don't do that.
No, they're locked in and being like, we want to be 3-0.
And look, here's one other thing. I mean, we're in week 3, right? So I mean, we got a long way to go, but the NFC North looks pretty weak right now, in my opinion. Who knows if in week 16, 17, we're looking back on this game as like some kind of tiebreaker between these teams for a playoff spot or something. So yeah, it's a big game because I do think Green Bay has potential to be a playoff team, and you want to look back on that game and think, oh, if that's the game that swung maybe a home field playoff berth in the 2nd round or something. So this game's got some implications maybe down the road.
A little bit like a May or June baseball series where you say we just want to win series and you win the first 2, and then you say, well, let's go get greedy and try to sweep this series.
Yeah.
So that's coming up. We'll have a full preview of Saints Packers on Friday's podcast here on the Saints Insider. So we hope you join us for that. We're going to get out of here. We got to get over to practice and check out how things are going over at the facility. Reminder that the Saints Insider podcast is sponsored by Bank Plus. Their banking decisions are actually made here in New Orleans by local bankers who know the community and take the time to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to bank anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Learn more at bankplus.net. And we'll be back Friday afternoon, as I said, on the Saints Insider podcast feed. Check us out on the NOLA.com Saints YouTube channel or on podcast feeds, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We'll also have live broadcasts on Facebook as well. For Luke Johnson, Rod Walker, and Jeff Duncan, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching Saints Insider.